Today, we're going to break down what might be one of the biggest moments in the future of work, a moment that really started to redefine the whole relationship between people, profit, and AI. And it all kicked off with one company's shocking move.
And, let's just start with the words of Jack Dorsey himself. Because on February 26th, 2026, he didn't just announce a layoff. No, he basically laid out a whole new reality for the white-collar world, a reality he claims most companies are totally asleep at the wheel about. And this was the number that sent shockwaves through the industry. 40%. Block, a company that was making tons of money, just cut 40% of its staff. We're talking over 4,000 people. But the real story, the part that changed everything, wasn't just how many. It was the why. This wasn't your typical, oh, the economy's bad, we have to tighten our belts kind of thing. Nope. This was something different. It was a strategic, forward-looking move that announced a brand new kind of layoff.
And Dorsey was super clear about this. Unlike all those other layoffs that get blamed on market slumps or hiring too fast, he came right out and said it. AI was the reason. It was what allowed them to do a fundamental, permanent reset of the whole company. The best way to think about it is this wasn't a temporary diet. This was like a permanent change to the company's DNA. So what even is this new blueprint? How can a company actually thrive with fewer people? Well, it's this huge shift away from the old way of thinking, where your value was tied to how many smart people you had on staff, towards a totally new way of measuring a company's strength.
Okay, so they call this the intelligence native firm. And what that really means is that your competitive edge doesn't come from your talented employees anymore. It comes from your own secret sauce of AI agents that are doing the work. And the ultimate goal? It's to completely separate the company's value from the number of humans it employs. And look, this chart right here, it tells the whole story. Between 2022 and 2026, you see Block's employee count get slashed by more than half, down to under 6,000 people. But at the same time, look at the gross profit. It's forecast to climb to over $12 billion. That right there is the core of the Dorsey Paradigm. Fewer people, more profit. So how do you pull off a change this huge without just completely torpedoing your company's reputation? Well, Block's approach, it was, let's just say, a wild ride. A real masterclass in contradictions. It was like a tale of two layoffs, really. On one side, you have this incredibly fair outcome. The severance package was amazing, 20 weeks of pay, health coverage, a $5,000 payment. Experts call that distributive justice. But on the other side, the process was a total disaster. We heard stories of people being fired right in the middle of interviews, of this surveillance culture where everyone had to constantly prove their value. The whole thing was just chaotic and, frankly, psychologically brutal. And that chaotic process, it had a really deep human cost. And the effects rippled out way beyond just the people who lost their jobs. For pretty much anyone with a white-collar job, this event just shattered something called the psychological contract. That's the unspoken deal, right? The promise that if you work hard, you're loyal, your company will take care of you, give you security, a chance to grow. All of a sudden, that promise just felt, well, broken. But here's the part that's just, it's brutal. The cruelest twist of all, for months, many of these Block employees had been actively training the company's internal AI tool. It was nicknamed Goose. They were told to use it, to weave it into their work. And they did, only to find out that the very proof of their success was used as the reason to eliminate their jobs. They literally trained their own replacements. And what about the people who were left? The survivors? For them, it created this thing called algorithmic anxiety, this constant fear of wondering, is my job next on the chopping block? This kind of constant stress, it's led to this new phenomenon of coasters. These are employees who are just checked out. They do the bare minimum because they feel like the company sees them as a cost, not an asset. And they now make up an estimated 28% of the entire global workforce.
So look, Block's move wasn't just about Block. It sent shockwaves through the industry, and it made pretty much every leader, every employee ask that one terrifying question: is my company next?
And this has kicked off a really critical debate around a new term you gotta know: AI washing. It's what happens when a company uses AI as this slick, futuristic excuse to cover up for good old-fashioned problems. Like they hired way too many people, or they're just not making enough money. So now you have analysts really digging into these announcements, trying to figure out what's real and what's just spin. And you can see here, Block's move is seen as the real deal, a genuine, transparent, structural shift. But look at the others. Amazon? That's seen as a mix of fixing overhiring and pivoting to AI. UPS? That had nothing to do with AI at all. It was just the economy. So it's super clear that not all these AI layoffs are what they seem. But here's the reality check. The truth is, almost nobody is at Block's level right now. Only a tiny fraction, about 1.4% of companies, are truly AI first. The huge majority, 68%, are still just dipping their toes in the water. But that 30% in the middle, the ones who are actively scaling up their AI, that's the next wave. That's the group to watch.
Okay, so let's put it all together. What are we supposed to take away from this? What does this massive tipping point actually mean for you, for me, for all of us? Well, for any leaders watching, this whole situation is basically a roadmap of what to do and what not to do. First, figure out how the work will get done with AI before you start cutting people. Second, you have to be radically transparent to avoid shattering that psychological contract. Third, remember that AI still makes mistakes, and you need people to fix them. And finally, a huge one. If you get rid of all your entry-level jobs, you're not going to have any leaders in a few years. And that's where we land. At the end of the day, the Dorsey Paradigm has given us this brutally efficient blueprint for capital, and it's a huge, flashing warning sign for workers. So as this new reality keeps unfolding, every single one of us, leader or employee, has to face this massive challenge. How do we build a future that's profitable without sacrificing our soul?